Sorry, guys, we're engaging, but even though we're broadcasting, YouTube hasn't picked it up yet. So we're re-stimulating the signal. So just.
Ooh, Sunday morning, sarsaparilla. Honey, this is gonna be a sweet one. Happy Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day. It's Mother's Day. Do you know where your mother is? Mine. She went home. God bless your mother. Always. My other mother, she's with me always. Always. And I'm talking about our Earth Mother, of course. Mahalo ke akua. Mahalo I makua hine. Mahalo nunui. Mahalo I te mai ola, mai ola, mai ola. We got friends inside. Let's go get started. Happy Mother's Day. Mai kaunalipo, mai kaunalipo, mai kahikina, mai kaulana. E hele mai o e atue, e hele mai e ku, a hina, a tangaroa, a tāne. E hele mai I kanaha I kalai e kanawai. E hele mai oi e au makua. Mahalo ke akua. As above, so below. May it be on earth as it is in heaven. Please, give us this day and forgive us. Please help us to forgive. Please, no temptation and no evil. Mahalo ke akua. May we be a blessing to each other. Mahalo ke akua. May you be a blessing to us all.
Of the raping of the land, of prejudice and superstition, such things have no place in Pale uli. Pale uli.
Hey, happy Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day. And welcome to the show. You know, it's Mother's Day. I hope you sent your mother your best thoughts and prayers. And I don't mean that facetiously or lightly, like it's bandied about sometimes these days. Like we trade away our actual actionable caring for just thoughts and prayers. You know, there's an old story. Nasruddin, he comes riding to the tent to seek wisdom from the holy man. He jumps off his camel and he goes bursting through the canvas, being a prince and all. Quite the show. Charges down the middle of the gathering and drops to his bejeweled knees in front of a holy man who, in contrast to the Prince Nasruddin, far from the splendor of his jewelry and his scimitar and his headdress, the holy man is sitting there in just a simple robe, you know. And Nasruddin says, I pledge my wealth, everything to you. He says, I pledge my heart, my soul to you. I want to be of service. Like you, I want to lead a life where I serve the people and give my all to the great Creator. And the holy man said, oh, that's good, but could you please tie up your camel first? Yeah, thoughts and prayers. So careful with all of that. And welcome Mother's Day to our guests here. I got fabulously Pali and the beautiful Kayolani, of course, coming live on the Zoom. I'm checking all my settings. This is a Zoom universe. Happy Mother's Day to you both. Brother Ramsey, happy Mother's Day in the sunlight to you. So, Kayu, you're the only girl with this six-pack of swinging, you know what? So let me go and let's start with the goddess this morning. Happy Mother's Day. Do you know where your mother is?
I do, and I sent her some very long studied, heartfelt thoughts and prayers this morning. I'm not able to be with her on Mother's Day, but you know, she's my mother, so send her plenty blessings. Also, my son, today marks 1 year since my son has been in the hospital in Lihue at Wilcox, and that's very difficult, you know, but he's safe, and there are no COVID cases on Kauai.
Ew.
And I wanted to thank you, Kalani, for helping me through a very difficult night the other night. If the gentleman wouldn't mind, I would like to tell this Mother's Day story. My niece was on life support, and they made the decision to take her off life support on Thursday evening. And so we did a ceremony for her here. And earlier I had a discussion with you, Kalani, and I said, let's pray for her to come back. And then I went, and I thought about all the things my son has suffered in the last 16 years. And then my prayer became, well, you know, if you're going to go with your mom, because her mom passed away at the same age, then please be with us and help take care of your sisters. And it was really amazing letting go type of a thing. And then when you and Hanalei came and did the prayers, and everyone in this neighborhood was blowing their poo at 8:00, and then it started raining. And we knew she was gonna go. She passed 30 minutes after being taken off the life support. And really, you know, 24-year-old beautiful Hawaiian girl, and very, very sad. And yet I'm glad she's with her mom today. And I just wanted to say, you know, I think the hardest thing of all for being a mother, especially, well, for me, is letting go. It is the hardest thing to let go of our kids, no matter how old they get. And I know your mom was like that with you, Kalani. You know, it's just, you're always going to be my baby kind of a thing, you know? So I wanted to thank you for helping me so much on this journey with my son and his journey with quadriplegia, and being a mom with that in your life is a very difficult thing, you know, but we all have our cross to bear. My grandma used to say, rest in heaven, Grandma.
Me, I carry them around to remind me.
Some novenas every day. Sing some novenas all the time.
Master Jimmy. So, Ramsey, I hope you know where your mother is. I know you do, and your loved ones, man. Good morning. It's good to see you, brother. Jimmy Love.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I can't hear Ramsey, though.
I know, he's muted. He's going to figure it out, though. There you go, Rams. Jump in there.
Yes, good morning. Hello. Hey, Jimmy, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead, brother.
Oh, no, I was just saying good morning.
And he was saying, where's Ramsey's microphone? Go, Ramsey. Give us the good news from Oahu, Ramsey.
Oh, well, as far as Mother's Day, I got a chance to stop by Mom's place last night, dropped off some flowers, kept our distance, but, you know, distancing does make the heart grow fonder. Right?
You.
So, yeah, so it was good to see her. Just good to see all our mothers, you know.
Yeah.
And it reminds me, you know, the whole term of makua is that it's internal support. Ma is inside us. Kua is our spine.
You.
They're the ones that hold us up even when they're not there, right?
You.
Kua. And internal backup. So, to all the mothers, mahalo. Yeah.
And for all you Biblica types, a whole new definition to the term akua.
Aye. Mahalo.
Yeah,
so
Jimmy, I know you know
the...
where your mom is. Where's your mom, James?
Well, she's probably watching her morning news commentary shows. I can look across at her lanai right now through my window.
See, I think Ramsey and I know Sister were talking about how we remain our mama's sons no matter how old we get, right? And it's like, and I can attest to everyone that Jimmy just built his mom an additional house next door in his property and moved her in, because that's what moms do. It doesn't matter if you're 16 or 66, they're moving in. Pali.
Aloha.
Aloha.
How's everyone in Haula?
Everybody's up preparing breakfast for Grandma and Mama.
Beautiful. And I hope Linda doesn't have to lift a hand.
Oh, no, she's still sleeping. It's my duty to wake her up when it's all ready to go. And since the cooks are getting very close, I may be absent for a moment.
No problem. Please, we're so glad you joined us. And I want to thank you the other day for that conversation with Kim Pine, Councilwoman Pine. That was very stimulating, you know, the idea of trying to create an opening to move in a new economic direction. And I'd wanted to get Ramsey roped in, but he was busy that day, and we were doing all kinds of, you know, Rising Voices 8 and then moving into that conversation. But picking up there, what could be more important on Mother's Day than to reaffirm a commitment to the Earth Mother and to the health recovery we're seeing? Interesting in this time, we're seeing the pressure, the stresses of this COVID situation, but we're seeing a lot of miraculous behavior, things at their best. Give us a short snapshot of that, Pali, before you got to go wake up Linda.
What was the question again?
It's like, what's the odds like of recovering in a new way? to recover without slumping back into the same tourism profile. I know those pressures are heavier on Oahu than they are out here with us. We tend to respond less to this. We got to get the economic ball rolling. It's more here about, wait a minute, let's take a time out and see how we're interacting with each other.
Well, I can only refer to, I draw very heavily on the wisdoms of our elders and our ancestors, and sometimes what they have to say is kind of simple and enables me to understand things a little better. For example, if you can't change the direction of the wind, adjust your sails. So where the winds are taking much of the world may not be a very good place. But if you know what the destination is, you would be foolish not to adjust your sails. But what it takes is courage, and more than just physical courage. It takes moral courage and it takes spiritual courage. So I feel that those are the qualities are needed in addition to innovation and creativity. But I think our sense of the best sense of guidance is just basically realigning with the natural laws of nature, in which our ancestors use as guides to their existence.
Honey, remember I'm broadcasting, Kay? What you making?
Wow, Kai'o, you're not muted.
I was, because there was some dog stuff going on behind me.
I hear you, and what you're making, that was so cute.
Oh, I wasn't muted.
Right, exactly.
Well, calamine.
Thank you, Polly, for that, though. That was, and Ramsey, I know you got some things to say about the economic and the development picture, why I'm so pleased to hear you. I know we've been looking at this a good 3 decades. What you seeing going on over there?
Well, we got the Wahoos on Oahu, and we always got to deal with the Wahoos. I was contemplating that, the concept of corrupting our values in denial. That's COVID, right? And I think that's kind of where we've been. And to Pauli's point is, what are our values that are going to get us back in direction, right? In direct connection, again, with Mother. Today is Mother's Day. And you say Mother is close by, do we know Mother? And Mother's coming home, as we've talked about, as the ocean rises. I think there's a different rising happening. Yeah. And as that tide shifts, as it rolls in, I think we have to recognize that we have systems set up that aren't set up for that, right? And so I see this vision of us with our foot underneath the steamroller, and yet we can't pull it out, and we feel like we have to finish the cycle. And they see it, we know it, and we're still going to turn the machine back on, knowing it's going to run us over. We just can't. There's an addiction to it, right?
Is it the sound of the motor? I mean, what's the addiction, right?
Right. It's like we are now spectators. And as spectators, we have a difficult time turning away from watching this accident happen. And we're in it.
Right.
And the difficult part is, whether it's Councilwoman Pine or anyone else, the people that got us here are not the ones that are going to get us out. They're standing. Their whole position is predicated on what brought us here. And so therefore, there is no more standing. if you change that system, because once you change that system and change the outcome, it changes who they are. So it's a very difficult thing. We're relying on the thing that's rooted. So therefore, poison fruit, right?
Ew.
The root is poisoned. The fruit could be poisoned.
Ew.
We haven't changed the soil. We haven't changed the root. We haven't changed we haven't changed any of that. So consequently, all we're doing is nurturing poisoned roots.
Right.
Right. This is going to require a full remediation of soil before we plant any new seed.
Right.
All we're doing is regenerating old seed from old soil, from old thoughts. And it's going to be very difficult. I think that's, and to Pauli's point, it's going to take courage, but it's going to take vision to recognize that we're not going back to what we know, but we have to create a condition that our children will know. And perhaps they're the ones that need to be participating and not us.
I hear you.
And we just need to do the weeding right now. Right? So, I mean, it's the whole thing of agroforesting versus the other stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I think you guys are doing that, the agroforesting part of it, asking monocroppers to think, that's the same mentality we're in. We have a political system that is monocropping.
Exactly.
Right?
Colonialized, Europeanized, modernized, monocropped, delivering reductionist outcomes from reductionist values.
That's right. So I don't know that even if we can point to it, the fact of the matter is in 9/11, they shut the planes down within hours, right? Because of an imaginary attack, one attack, but now we're expecting other attacks. We're being attacked and they're keeping the airports open. So there's a decision being made, right? They've already told us what the decision is. They were just going to scale ourselves back into the previous experience because it's still a scaling model. What's the term? Aftermath?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But we're just going back to using math after.
Right.
And it's the same math. Right. So we're still using an accounting model when really we're being held accountable. And there is no accountability in the accounting model that they're using.
Right, but they call it checks and balances, right? They call it the triple bottom line. They pretend that somehow by holding hands with the accountants, we grace them with some sense of morality, as all they deliver is the justification is the bottom line. And, you know, this is well known, right? It's Plato's cave. It's Plato's den of madmen. So this is not a new thought. I mean, Jimmy, that's been cycling around even the Euro world for some 2,000 years.
Absolutely. And just to sort of restate what Ramsey said, we come from a model of making and taking. And we kind of have to shift to a seeing and caring model because, I think we get trained as humans to go to solution, and especially as trained human leaders, we tend to jump to solution when we should be staying in discovery, and we haven't done that really, and we're seeing it repeat itself, like you guys have been saying. You can't make new stuff out of old stock. It just doesn't work that way. And I had an interesting experience with my son and daughter-in-law recommended a film, and it took me back, something in the film took me back to my own spiritual awakening at the age of 16. And it was not a remembering, it was a tactile feeling of being there and having that spiritual awakening. The idea that we are connected to all other living things on the planet. And the thought of that is one thing. The feeling, the actual, oh man, that's something entirely different. And it's so powerful that it's almost like we tend to stay away from it. It's like a fire that you get too close to, it might burn you, And That's what we need more of right now, is everybody needs to stop and go, wait a second here. We are connected to each other and all other living things, and everything we do has an effect. And before we try and start a new plan or restart an old one, we need to stay in discovery and figure out what's going on.
And that's, and those are beautiful thoughts. And then I get all upset at words like discovery, right? I kind of think sometimes the discoverer's mentality is how we got into this particular place. So maybe the exact same operational procedure, the exact same emotion, but we call it, we need to stay in relationship. It's like we don't push to. And by that, what I mean is, in the best possible sense, our academics, our researchers, our governance, our civil servants, they show up and try to discover what the problem is, right? And they engage with the community and all of us. And boy, if they can't find a problem in the community, they'll bring a problem that they already framed. You know what I mean? And then they'll drop it into place so that there's justification for their actions and their expenditures and why they exist. So community sometimes gets victimized by these discoverers that are bringing not just service, but they come and extract intellectual property from the community. So in a real sense, academia does go around discovering things, and then they monetize it and it moves right into the same system we're talking about. And we've all seen that. Again, I'm tossing it out to you recovering academics, right? I mean, the University of Hawaii, it's part of the big state machine, which is part of the whole machine that has $108 million annual Hawaii Tourism Authority budget. I'm, like I said the other day, wow, I think for about $2, I could get the word out about Hawaii. Right? Everybody knows about Hawaii. Why do we spend $100 million a year advertising Hawaii and then complaining about 10 million tourists?
Can I say something really quick about that? I always bring up 2017 in the month of February. Is the shortest month of the year. And it was kind of before a lot of different things went down. It was kind of like maybe the last good year on Kauai, because then we had the flooding. But in the month of February, the island of Kauai brought in $154 million in 28 days. Tourist dollars. 28 days, the island of Kauai County. And this is in the year 2017. Now, we still have the same 3 hospitals that we had when I was a child, the same 3 high schools that we had when I was a child, no wheelchairs for people in wheelchairs to go. So this industry that keeps us enslaved is generating a lot of cash, and all we have to do is adjust our thinking. And I want to say, Jimmy, I think I get what you mean by staying in that state of discovery. It's more like people seem like they're having a human revolution. Yeah, they're figuring out that we can't keep doing it the way we've been doing it. And there's a type of human revolution going on within each individual. And that is maybe perhaps a better term versus discovery, where we have to, inside of ourselves, revolt against what we've been conditioned to believe and participate in. And then we have to go from there individually, change our way of thinking. If Hawaii is bringing in that much money, why do we have so many people living on the streets? And why are we importing food? I mean, it's just like you said, Ramsey, the system is like we're cultivating poison. And I got this visual in my head because when I lived in Kokee, I had this beautiful tree, but it was a belladonna tree. It was a poisonous tree, and you couldn't even trim it without completely protecting yourself. So that is a really good analogy. It's this beautiful tree that we have, but it's poisonous, and we have to approach it with a lot of caution because we cannot go back. We just can't go back. So really appreciating this discussion. Mahalo.
How are we gonna not go back when so many off-island players are intricately involved with the huge dollar extraction that you just described? How do we do
Right.
that, Pa, Jimmy, Rams? But
Well,
we're
you-
really
you
kind of
go-
rocking a
Yeah,
hard
you
place.
You got to follow that money. If you want to see what's wrong with that equation, you got to follow that money in detail. And and we all know it's part of an old, like I was saying, it's part of the old make and take, philosophy. And discovery, what I was meaning was not like a question, like a loaded question, not a loaded discovery, loaded with, well, how do we discover how to keep control? How do we discover how to go back to the way things were?
Hey, I was just processing my historic trauma for the world to see. Knock it off.
For being discovered.
Yeah. Discovery Day. Yeah, I don't celebrate that either.
Right. It's like Bali says, don't fix it, heal it. You know what I mean? So for the rest of you on that model, this is what I'm talking about. I need to discover in me the place where I'm okay with all of that conversation. And we all need to work on it. Take this moment. Enjoy the quarantine. Work on yourself.
Yeah.
Human revolution.
The time for inquiry, I think, is what Jim is saying.
Yeah.
Right? We need to be, again, with the emphasis on in. Yeah. The querying should be inside, questioning ourselves.
Mhm.
Where are we going and why are we going? Versus just going, right? Because that seems to be the thing. We were going, we stopped, we need to keep going.
Right. And we can go smaller and 6 feet apart.
Oh, yeah. So let's not go
Slower.
as fast. Let's just stay
Right.
farther apart. And the fact that we've been having the conversation to say open up visitor industry again with COVID now.
Right.
It's like,
And
Okay,
the idea is to open it up and slow it down and pace it out and trickle it. So in other words, hey, don't rip off the Band-Aid. Let's slowly let it infect us until we die. Right?
Right,
What? What?
Yeah.
Right? Polynesian style is hemo that bugger, get down to the ocean, wash them out, and get this thing over with. Right? So, I mean, we need to seriously think about how we entice, how we invite leadership to not be so foolish as to replicate the position we've already found ourselves in.
Well, Kalani, I was on a conversation the other day. Same thing, island tourism, right? People wanting to be all over the islands, Caribbean, all the various island groups are coming together, and the conversation continued to be about what they're going to do for us, the workforce, right?
How are they
And the
going to
elephant-
help? How are they going to help us
Yeah,
clean
yeah.
this or get our
Right.
money back? Or
Right. So, I mean, the elephant in the room that was never brought out was the fact that none of this is owned by any of us, right? So it's not, you got to follow that. Jimmy's talking about follow the money. We got to look at the ownership. The reality is ownership is elsewhere, right? The owners are going to be operating. And so as much money as we say we're making here, that can't be the case unless more money is being made elsewhere.
Mhm.
so here's
Right?
here's a
Right?
radical idea, right? Here, what if we all woke up in Hawaii and decided we were going to nationalize all of this industry? So the entire state government exercised its right to secede from the Union, and using the help of the U.S. Navy that we could treaty with as our friends and allow them to be a player in this game. We nationalize all the hotels and we take all the assets. And we begin running our hotel industry for the state of Hawaii, for the people here in Hawaii. You know what I mean? So, since we're going to nationalize, it ain't the state of Hawaii, right? We should be the kingdom of Hawaii. And we now own all the hotels, the rent-a-cars and everything else. Thanks for that, Conrad Hilton, right? It's like, thanks for that, Marriott and the Utah Mormons. It's like, just exercise our right. None of them actually own this land. They don't actually own these buildings. It's like, thanks for putting up our hotels. See ya. That's a radical idea.
I like it.
Well,
I like it a lot.
But I think that goes back to what Jimmy was saying. Unless we're willing to inquire outside of the box, we won't have these kinds of conversations, because that is a potential solution, right? I mean, it's changing lessee to lessor.
Exactly.
Right? And we haven't really done any of that, because it gets thrown into the conversation of sovereignty.
Right.
And so, but I think if that's what we're talking about is sovereignty at some point in time, right? Is the bottom line, is the individual ability to feed oneself, their family. But in the Hawaiian values of aloha, the Polynesian values, it's about interconnectedness, self-sufficiency through interconnectedness.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
So
But
self-sufficiency for us all. Again, it's the
correct.
power of the we, right? We want
That's right.
self-sufficiency for everyone, not just for
Exactly.
us.
That's right. And that's the model. So unless we have conversations that are framed with that concept, then we're going to continue to go back to what Jimmy says, the take it model, right? The extraction model.
Mm-hmm.
Because all we've done is change the export. We were exporting fruit. Now the fruit we export are our kids, right?
Ain't that the truth?
And so we're still sending pua away, right? Whereas we're more pua because of it, right? The object is how do we return back to that place? And if we go back to what the visitor industry started with, it wasn't with hotels. It was with people coming and staying with somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
It was family, right? So if we really wanted to shift things back to the future, what would that look like? And we've already said it with Airbnb and all the things. They shut it down because of certain people not using their properties properly. Basically, again, foreign ownership. That's the pilikia.
Right.
But imagine if we went back to and brought it forward, where every home had a third room, a fourth room, right? Which became the visitor room. And everyone became host. Everyone was a host. Instead of spending $60 to $80 million with an agency that invites people without us inviting them, what if every person in Hawaii was the ones that invited? If every person was to invite 2 people and they got part of the commission, here's my number. You got my number anyway. What if the monies came to me instead and I invited who I wanted to invite? And I was now subsidized with the room instead of a hotel room.
Exactly.
And I was allowed them to stay. And I got to invite at least 2 people a year, 3 people a year. Because
some people might have 50.
Exactly. The fact of the matter is,
let me ask you this.
We know people, right? We are the best hosts. Why not let the host invite instead of the surrogate host invite?
Right.
And then we got to host them, right? Somebody else is inviting somebody else. A stranger is inviting a stranger so that we can host them. So let's go direct. So there's a lot of things. I mean, this is just one meandering of my mind.
A lot of out of the box thinking. What's up, Caillou?
That's an exciting idea, because I always said we could take the gross income of a year, visitor industry income, and divide it by, say we let 100 people on each island per year. And then that's the price tag. Because I find also all of the discounting going on, I get really disgusted with that, where, one day I'm on the beach and I'm talking to visitors and they got their condo for 7 days in Princeville for $89. 7 days in Princeville. Now, how does that support my family with all of these timeshare discounting things going on?
How do people rent a home for $89?
Got to get rid of the timeshare for sure. But the discounting,
right?
That's another thing, because once you start discounting, you know what? We position ourselves as cheap. So here we are, our visitor, that is this host that's inviting people and making us host them. They're also cheapening us by discounting everything and providing these visitors. If it costs me over $400 to go visit my mom on the Big Island from Kauai, round trip, everything said and done with luggage, just me, how can they be coming from the West Coast, with a $400 round trip from Eugene or whatever? Why are we discounting ourselves? this is why it's not supporting us. So I'm really excited about your idea, Ramsey, about that. And then I had to jump in on that and say, and no more discounts. This is the price. You come here and we're going to put you to work in the taro patch. Ooh, fantasies.
No, but I mean, if you stop and think about it, we have a whole millionaire, billionaire population that gets away with the 1995 exchange over here in Hawaii. What's up with that? Right? It's like, I'm sorry, I can't go to Bhutan without dropping half of my year's salary.
Yeah.
Right? The way tourism happens in other places like Palau, where people are paying and they got to do environmental stewardship. Here in Hawaii, hey, this is adult Disneyland. You get to come walk down Main Street, pee in the corner, and leave your trash, and we're supposed to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean,
Polly
this
looks
is
like
a
he has
heck
something
of a
to say.
conversation, you know what I'm saying, on Mother's Day. But I wanted to make sure that we keep the Earth Mother front and center. Seriously, I've seen so many great improvements to our air quality, our water quality, our quality of life, the way people are behaving to each other. You know what I mean? I'm sorry, this doesn't seem like a disaster, and I work for the disaster center, right? It's like I'm used to looking, this looks like anything but a disaster. It looks miraculous, actually. So how are we going to both save the islands for future generations and create economy? We were talking about we need to get into real economy, manufacturing, producing, real food industries, creating supplies and goods right here in the islands that serve the people of the islands. What say you, gentlemen? Miss Caillou?
Polly has I see it over his head.
Yeah.
There's a
I
cloud.
do too. I see the glow.
One of the things that I've been sort of sensing, first of all, is getting a firm grasp of we're dealing with a capitalist system, or essentially with capitalism, and I'm not so sure everybody understands what it is.
Right.
And hence they're talking about we need to replace it, we need to do this, we do this, and yet I'm not so sure they understand capitalism per se is not good or evil.
Mm-hmm.
It's intrinsically, it doesn't possess these values. It's what those who operationalize it, they bring their values. And the problem with people, or possibly the solutions, when they bring these values, they bring their view of reality. So when you bring your view of reality, you need to be absolutely sure that your view of reality doesn't limit your thinking to the possibilities for solutions.
Mm-hmm.
It's like creating a psychic prison that you create for yourself and you put yourself in it. And that psychic prison are your angers or your frustrations or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I'd like to take a look at the capitalism. You know, they're essentially pretty basic. There are five components of it, and we all know it in one form or another. And it needs economic freedom, and the need to have the freedom to move about. There has to be some level of willingness to engage in exchange, trade this. You know, I give you my turtle for your squid.
Hey, don't be talking about my squid.
And the other component.
I ran out of ink.
And the other component is there has to be some semblance of ownership of something.
There it is.
So you got to own it, and then link to that are what are my rights to owning what I have or what you have. And then there's that thing called the profit motive that pushes everybody, that basically is the candle under your hole, or the, you know, the fire or whatever it is you want to call it. But that's just what motivates people to do what they do. And then the last one is competition. Okay, here's that system. It's being used by a worldview that uses it in this sort of way. So my thoughts are, it's not changing it. We have an opportunity to transform it.
Yes.
See, so the key should be transformation and basically introducing new values. For example, the current paradigm basically is financial capital. That's what drives it. This is, money. Mm-hmm. But how can we transform it? Transform it is by bringing in the dimension of spiritual capital. In many ways, an investment in spiritual capital can actually generate more financial benefits. The other thing is let's take a look at profit and the profit motive, which really drives what I think. It's the narrow definition of profit is delimited only to money. What if we expand the definition of profit to also mean aloha? Because aloha brings value. It generates value, and much like profit. So we can expand the concept of profit so it's not delimited just to money. You want to be profitable? You might have a cent, but you might be the wealthiest person there. And that attracts. A lot of tourists don't want to go to 5-star hotels, etc. They want to go to a place where that kind of wealth is the return for the kind of profit that they're willing to invest.
Authenticity.
Agreed.
So again, by focusing on transformation and within the same language so everybody understands, we can sort of make this thing happen almost immediately. And it doesn't require a whole lot of money.
No, I concur. And, if we look at how it developed here, the tourist industry was the industry of the rich, the upper class. There was no such thing as, the rest of us were migrating. We weren't tourists. We were moving around the planet trying to find a life. So immigrants were moving to different islands and setting up. But those early hotels, the Royal Hawaiian, the stuff that goes on in Waikiki, those were the old tourist model. Privately held buildings by entrepreneurs who decided to get into partnership with landholders and create this touch and go. The truth is, after World War II and the Korean War, when we saw the influx of the large military personnel and their wives and their families and the whole support service industry, our local boys got together and created Hilo and the Nani Loa and the Hilo Hawaiian, and the first ever resort set up in a resort area. It worked so well because of the volcano, because Mark Twain and people coming to the thing, but Hilo is such a rainy old town, right? So the next thing is out there in Kalapana, out there on Maui, when they go around the corner of Lahaina and they set up the new look, right? That's the 70s, 80s when they get in. They come over to Big Island and they set the same thing up, right? So they're in partnership. And they brought in the big players. Because the big players are the guys giving them the money, the dollars for leasing the land and taking advantage of all of this. So let's all be honest about how we got to this mega in the 80s blow up tourism model. It happened by the fathers of the guys that are running it today. So, all those guys we know. Apparently in this town, you graduate from politics into the tourism industry. So let's get straight, everybody. Let's think about how we're actually going to do this, because as Ramsey pointed out, they're all sucking on the same tit this Mother's Day. And that tit is the tea that starts tourism. So, I mean, what's up?
I just wanted to get back to what Doc was saying, and Princess Owana texted me a message. It's the Aloha Spirit Law, right? It's already there.
Which just before COVID-19, we were having a 2-year conversation about the Aloha Spirit War and how it's misused in the United States,
Right.
how it's misused all over the world, and how people are commodifying Aloha.
Right.
They're beginning to profitize everything they can out of Hawaii, and shouldn't we say something? You see my mom? See her right back there?
Yes.
Bourbon drinking, swearing lady from KNI. And she worked for Hilton Corporation as the head of housekeeping for Hilton Hawaiian Village. How about we turn that place into a real Hawaiian village for our low-income people? Hey, we got to shut down some hotels. Let's shut down that big obese and make a real fish pond out of that area where the dock goes out. Let's build some walls over there, keep the ocean clean, start malaming the aina, and actually make it a Hawaiian village. We used to talk about that way back in 1969 when I was sitting down there under the tree by the canoe house. Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, well, Kalani, this goes back to what Jimmy was saying, and also what Pali was talking about, is that if you rethink this, let's not let mass tourism be the guide to this conversation to recovery, right? Because this conversation is still being guided by the impacts, the effects, the aspirations, the losses, the assets of mass tourism, right? So the conversation is 10 million was too much. So how much is enough?
Yeah.
9.5?
Yeah.
Or do we go back to 6? What's that number? But the conversation never includes what we've always talked about is community-based benefit, right? Yeah. Community-based tourism is a completely different animal.
Yes.
And so when we start talking about community-based tourism or visitor experiences versus mass tourism, they're operating off of a different set of values, a different set of benefits, et cetera, et cetera. And yet the mass tourism model, the visitor still wants what the community-based visitor wants. But it's being driven by the mass tourism asset model.
Precisely.
It's not the community-based asset model, right?
You can go to Honolulu and anecdotally discover by talking to generational people connected to Kapuhulu, connected to Kaimuki, that early Waikiki was community-based tourism. It was actually people funded and worked by the people of those neighborhoods around there who came down and supported the whole thing. It's not until the 60s, 70s, 80s where we see the explosion. I mean, we literally lived and watched the explosion of this beast that they call a tourism machine. So no, I hate to break it to all of you fine folk out there in Oahu. It wasn't always like that. There was a time we remember where the beaches didn't look like that, where all those hotels were not in the skyline.
Right. So the cautionary note is subjugation by your own is still subjugation.
Right?
And so we have to be careful that just because we have now taken over the hotel, supposing that we win, tomorrow it's ours. How do we behave in that facility, right? So if we go back, and I think, Polly, we've had this conversation, if we went back to a time that the visitor values, the hosting values of the community were driving this, and we were saying, okay, how are we going to invite 10 million people to Hawaii? What would it look like? Would we have built a 40-story building? Would we have built roads for buses? What would have been our method? So if we're going to go back to Polynesian island-based tourism, we can't use the current model to have that conversation.
No, agreed.
Because it's a comparison, right? We're comparing, and now we're saying, what would our visitor model look like? How do we entertain more than 10 people at a time, right? We didn't end the luau at 9 o'clock so that we could get everybody home. We kept going for 5 days, right? Until everybody was piha, right? The whole time period is a constraint. We do things now because the visitors got to get back on a plane in 4 days, right? Mm-hmm. We're pulling Kalo at 9 o'clock, right? They want to come at 11 o'clock, so we wait until they get there at 11 o'clock, and the the kalo is, lepo
The leaf
already,
is up,
right? Gone, right? So again, what's the to Cleo's point? What's authentic? What's the time when? So the whole time frame based on mass tourism, ecotourism, in eco meaning economic tourism, right? Because as we know, they feed the hippos at 10 o'clock, so that when the van comes, the hippos come. But now the hippos are saying, hey, there's a van coming at 10 o'clock. Let's go look at the people, look at us because they're going to feed us, right? We've done the same thing here. So I think that at some point in time, the timing, the community-based framework, we just have to be very cautious that we don't get caught up in the trap of having this discussion in the current model of mass tourism.
Absolutely.
Because they're trying to repair it, right? They're trying to repair it using that as a standard. And obviously that's not the standard that we're talking about, right? So I think, as Paulie said, that's the capitalistic model. But there is one piece that's missing. I would just frame the shift it this way. When before he passed or before he transitioned, Kupuna said, profit is when one takes more than one gives. That was simple. I mean, it's a simple definition, maybe an oversimplification, right? But when one takes more than one gives, that's the definition. Now, Paulie is saying is if we shift that definition, what if everybody, back to the old days when we went camping, remember when we used to go camping, they give you a list. Bring your mosquito repellent, bring your toilet paper, bring your Kleenex, right? And a garbage bag because you got to carry your trash out. What happens if every visitor comes to us and says, you got to bring one toilet paper, you got to bring a plastic bag because you're taking your trash back, right? Everything that we did as kids are still applicable today. When our kids got to go to school, bring their own ream of paper because we can't do it, right? Why isn't it good for somebody else? Before you come to Hawaii, you're not taking, you're giving. Before you leave the island, you need to plant a tree. Before you leave the island, you need to clean up. You need to do something for Hawaii before you leave and take from Hawaii.
Yep.
All of a sudden, I'd rather have those resources being brought to us than our resources being taken. That's what I'm saying. They want, but we haven't given them that opportunity.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. We need to shift the model.
Right.
Why would, in other words, to us, we've been asked to jump into the river, right? One that we cannot swim in. But our kupuna were smart. They built awai, right? They'll bring the whole river to the valley, to the village, make the awai, and then the water goes back to the village. If we saw visitor industry more like an awai, right? We funnel money and we put it back in. Nobody wants to stop the river. We see what happens when the river gets stopped, right? Well, all we need to do is develop the awai that allows us to move the money through the community, or the vai-vai through the community and back. That's the pilikia. We haven't figured that out yet. We're all trying to jump in the river, and since we don't know how to navigate the river, we're trying to control the river. We got to go back to places, right? What's the awai that we bring into every community? Every community is the lo'i that grows, but we allow it to flow back, right? Nutrify it, allow it to go back out into the system, keep it flowing. There is a way of doing it, but we have to go back to the island wisdom and the way of thinking that allowed sustainability and our kupuna to be here for thousands of years in the absence of ships and planes.
Yeah.
Right.
But
and see that as a resource.
Cautionary tale, when they first set up these resort areas, that was their ideas. Like, let's limit the tourists to a small area. Let's put them in there. We'll bring the services in. We won't let them impact. Hey, that works so good. Let's build more of those areas. You know what I mean? And they built them all over the place. And now, even far away South Point, they've been working for 40 years trying to build something down there. It's like, what? Oh, the excuse is always so that we can have the employment for those in Pahala Town.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's never how it works. I've never seen the employment model actually distribute economics to our local population. So we really have some challenges on how we economically sustain ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's called mission creep.
Yes.
Right? A creep of creeps.
Well, you guys, thanks so much, Paulie. Give us a goodbye. Everybody say sign off to your moms. Thanks for joining us on a Sunday morning. It's so good to see you all on Mother's Day. And I'm glad that folks are at least having this conversation. Let's go around the clock. Caillou, tell your mother you love her.
I love you, Mom. Happy Mother's Day to my grandma in heaven and to all of my kupuna, all of our moms who have passed. I love you. And last thing about the visitor industry that I've always felt about us, that we are all, whether we're male or female, we have that mothering instinct in us. It's part of our aloha. And we want to mother, we want to nurture our visitors. We want them to have a good time. We want to have a good time with them. And so we want to make this now come back full circle, like Papa Ali'i says, and Ramsey and Jimmy. We need this to now become a good time for everyone, not just for a few chosen few. Anyway, happy Mother's Day to all the moms up there. Aloha.
Ramsey.
Love you, Mom. Love all the moms. Thank you so much. Thanks for this circle. Good to see everybody.
Love to Caroline, man.
Thank you. Yeah,
Jimmy,
that's a special
love.
mom.
Ain't no love better than that.
Well, yeah, maybe. You know, that sort of Mother's Day, the ultimate expression of mother is mother with child. We have all been the child, and our mothers before us in a way that no other things are connected. I think that's what we need to do forward, is remember that feeling, tap into that energy where we are connected with everything, each other, all living things. Don't step forward until you make sure you're not going to leave a bad footprint.
Thanks, Jimmy. Pa Lee, give my love to the family and send us home.
You know, one thing about mother that is a very special to Oceania, particularly Polynesians, is that we have actually two mothers. We have our biological birth mother, and then we have our earth mother. In Polynesia, when a child is born, the afterbirth is wrapped in tea leaves and buried into a sacred place in the land. That metaphorically symbolizes your umbilical cord is now connected to your earth mother. So our responsibility is to see to their health, their welfare, their beauty, and to care for her in all that we do. Happy Mother's Day to all of our mothers.
Yo.
Yo, love you all. Love you all. See you next week. Happy Mother's Day.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Take every beautiful mountain. You take one long look down to the sea. Take the water, rain, the river, the fountain. It's all flowing somewhere, just like you and me. Take all these things together. With you they make up the great divine. Still it's a long way to heaven, unless you leave that all behind. You take every beautiful woman, try to find one stand-up man. Give him someone he can live without. Make her more than he can stand. And all the love we're making, we hope forgives us all of our crimes. Still it's a long, long way to heaven, unless you leave that all behind. I don't know why it's so simple, but it is so hard to understand. Why we fight so hard takes all kinds of courage, and it takes all kinds of pain, and it takes all of us to nourish the next set of players in the game. And all these children that surround us, they give us love, take it one day at a time. Still, it's a long way to heaven unless you leave this all behind. Yeah, 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 yeah. Sing with me, boys. It's a long way to heaven. Yeah, such a long way to heaven. Yeah, it's a long way to heaven unless you leave this all behind. Yeah, 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 yeah. You can't take it with you. The law of the Okole.